So Uncommon Sense in Unusual Times. So this is the title of the book that I published last week, and I started writing it years ago, but I didn't know that it would be so relevant and timely as it is now, because it's really weird now. So let's see how we can make the most of it. The reason why I talk about uncommon sense is because that is exactly what we need. So if you look at the definition of common sense, it's good sense and sound judgment in practical matters, which sounds very logical. And this is the foundation of the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated, which sounds really nice, but it also implies that everybody is like us, which is luckily not true, and it would be a selfish perspective anyway. So if you think about a disagreement, if you think that you are right, and I know that I'm right as well, then the default position is that I have to convince you that you're the loser, I'm the winner. But if you have the right mindset and you realize that cultural differences are just clashes of common senses, then immediately we realize that it's not a binary solution. It's not a binary choice. It's about learning from each other. Because if you tell me that you are right, then I'm sure that there's a reason for that. So let's find out what that is. This is the biggest challenge that we have. So for example, imagine that you have a tiny, tiny piece of map of London and you try to find something in New York. Then it would be pretty difficult. But what if you listen to the motivational speakers and you think positive and you try harder? Then probably you get lost more quickly. So that doesn't really work. And it's logical, it makes sense. But when we interact with someone, the exact same process happens. We use a tiny piece of our own mental map, we assume it's 100%, and we also assume that other people have the same. And that's where communication breaks down. That's something that we need to learn about. It's not natural. So even if you look at companies, 60 to 80% of all problems stem from strained relationships between employees. It's not because they are not good enough. It's because they clash. And the top three reasons are clashes of personalities, clashes of values, and poor leadership. And all three of them stem from the same source, the lack of understanding of why people think and behave differently. So that's exactly what we want to address with Global Disc, the blueprint of why people think and behave differently. So today it's more about understanding the topic. First, why now, and why is Global Disc needed? And then we can go into how it works and what's in it for you as a trainer, coach, or leader. I can show you what's happening behind the scenes. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to share it. And if I refer to something, I mention any numbers, I can send you the original articles, researches, anything you need. So because cultural differences are clashes of common senses, so we see the world from our perspective, and we often don't see the whole picture. And that's why we created this kind of mindset gap. And this is business. It's not a nice to have skill. Because for example, 86% of leaders see themselves as inspiring, but 82% of employees think they are not. That's a huge gap there, based on the golden rule. 80% of CEOs consider their customer service outstanding. According to Salesforce, only 8% of customers agree with them. That's a huge gap. There is good intention and common sense, but it backfires. And it costs them a lot. Or 75% of employees leave managers, not companies. And when you do a training, I'm pretty sure that you get a lot of stories about this. Or 89% of new hires fail within 18 months because they cannot fit in. 70% of leaders believe they are in the top 10%, according to Marshall Goldsmith. That's really busy up there. And 79% of potential in a team is lost due to interaction gap. And I'm going to share this research with you. Jacob Morgan had a really interesting question. What we should be teaching leaders now to prepare for the future? This is the question that he asked 140 top CEOs, and he also published a book called The Future Leader. He identified 4 mindsets and 5 skills. And 4 mindsets, 1 was technology, the skill, and the first mindset, growth mindset, teamwork, inclusion, global mindset. And in terms of skills, self-awareness, innovation, communication, and coaching. So 8 out of the 9 are directly related to the blueprint of why people think and behave differently. It is that important. And this is why I failed as well. So if you look at this good-looking guy in the uniform, that's me. And I grew up in a smaller village in Hungary. And I didn't have a lot of cross-cultural experience, or at least that's what I thought so. And then I studied Italian linguistics. As soon as I finished, I came to the UK, and obviously I didn't really have transferable skills. So I started as a lot of new immigrants from Eastern Europe. But after 3 years, I went to university and I got another master's in international management. This was much more practical because I replicated an old research and I wanted to compare the Hungarian managers with the Western Europeans. But in Hungary, we had 2 generations, the one that grew up in communism and the new generation that was affected by it indirectly. And the data showed that the gap between the 2 generations in Hungary was much bigger than the gap between the new generation and the Western Europeans. And if you think about it, it contradicted everything that we learned about what all the academics claim, that culture is country-specific and stable. I said, no, look at the numbers. That's not true. But who are you to question them? They've been around for 40 years and you're just a student, even though that's one of the best universities in the world. So I forgot about it. I started my own company, which was a restaurant booking site. The business model is pretty simple. You book a table, we get the money, but it was much more exciting than that. So we started with 35 restaurants here in Brighton, and in 1 year we had 5,500 all over the UK, became a joint venture, and that's where it went wrong. So on paper, everything made sense. We were getting the results, but I just couldn't work with the other CEO who was French. And I'm not saying that was the main problem, but definitely that didn't work out. So we got to the point where we had to get out of the business. We sold the shares. It is still online. And this is when I started my research, because I didn't understand how come that was the exact topic of my dissertation. I had years of experience and I couldn't put that theory into practice. What happened exactly? So I got certified in a lot of different things because I wanted to understand it. And my assumption was that if all of those models are or were correct, there must be a huge overlapping part. And that's what I'm interested in. Maybe they use different metaphors, different colors, slightly different definitions, but there must be a structure beneath the surface. And the result of that research is Global Disc. And this webinar is about presenting some of the main insights that I found. So the first one is that our great-grandparents had different problems. So if you think about most of the intercultural leadership models, they were created in the 60s, 70s, based on the results from people who, but pretty much most of them are dead already. I mean, we definitely loved our great-grandparents, but our life is different. We have new challenges and they require new solutions. They grew up without internet, EU, cheap flights. It was a very different world, but we are still using these models. So if you think about that, in the last 40 or 50 years, the world's changed a lot. It changed more than the 150 years prior to that. Then we can see why the current solutions are not necessarily getting the results that they are hoping for, because the context changed, but not the solution. If you're an accountant or lawyer, you have to be up to date. It's not optional. If you are a coach or trainer, you don't. It's more diluted. Intercultural doesn't equal international, and I know that this might sound controversial, but it's not. So as soon as you mention the word culture, this is what most people think about. The 5 do's and don'ts in different countries, the statistically average values and beliefs, and yes, they are important, because if, let's say I move to Spain, then it is useful to learn about what people are used to. Culture is what we are used to, not who we are, and there's a big difference there. And sometimes maybe they talk about generations and genders. So if you think about it, then these are the kind of cultural groups that most companies focus on when they talk about diversity. And yes, they are important. But if you look at the research where they compared 17 cultural groups in terms of practicality and reliability, so technically they were looking at the range of differences, then these were the bottom three: country, generation, and gender. And it makes sense because you don't choose these ones. But wherever you were born, probably you learn how to navigate efficiently. And that's important. But if you look at different cultural groups, the ones that you chose, let's say your educational level, your profession, your hobbies, then they are a much stronger clue regarding your preferences, because ideally you choose one where your personal preferences match what is normal around you, the preferences of that group. We all belong to 15 or 20 cultural groups at the same time. Country of origin is one of them. So when you talk to someone, what are the chances that the other person belongs to the same 15 or 20 cultural groups like you? It's next to nothing. Technically, every single conversation is a cross-cultural dialogue, but most people don't know about it. So they are not actively looking for the solution that could unlock the potential within and between people. But if you go deeper, then you realize that there are even different personality types within a cultural group, sometimes with opposing preferences. So now it's getting really complicated. How can you be an expert in 200 countries and 4 or 5 generations and the genders and the combination of those, even if the numbers were correct and up to date? That's pretty impossible. And it's true, diversity is insanely complex on the surface. But beneath the surface, there are a limited number of levers. There are a limited number of values and psychological needs. The behavior, the best practice that you use to express those values and meet those needs, yes, that's complex. But beneath the surface, there are a limited number of levers. And that's exactly what Global DISC is about. And if you look at the research again, then visible diversity has no proven benefit unless there is cognitive diversity. And I'm going to show you a few examples for that. Because cognitive diversity, if you look at teamwork and performance, is more important than the visible layer of diversity. So for example, this was a team of 10 senior leaders from 8 different countries and 3 continents. On the surface, it's really colorful, beautiful. It looks good on the website. But this is the team report. If you look at it, the cognitive diversity index is 22%. That means that you can see that red line, that all the 10 people are within that range. They are almost cognitively inbred. They are very, very similar. And this is homophilic diversity, that we trust and like people who are like us inside, not outside. But if you look at the sliding scale as a range of perspectives, as a range of approaches to problems and opportunities, and everybody's standing there, then you can see that the blind spot is pretty huge. Everybody's standing there in the corner. I mean, there's no corner, it's a circle, but it's there in a segment. So how do you know that you make the best decision? Imagine that you have a problem or opportunity here in the middle and everybody's standing here. Can you make the best decision? Do you feel safe? Because since the year 2000, more than 50% of Fortune 500 companies disappeared. Size is not a guarantee at all. They are not the ones who thrive in a VUCA environment, not at all. Diversity is cool until somebody disagrees with you. After that, it's not. But this is the danger. Imagine that you have a meeting with these people. They are really similar inside. They make a decision. Everybody agrees. So it feels right. But it doesn't make it real. It doesn't make it true. And now we can see that. So it's almost like having 11 goalkeepers in a football team. Yeah, very safe, but that's not what you want. You want different people with different set of skills. And you want to create a high-performing team. But that's not based on common sense and good intention. And I'm going to show you why. This is a very recent case study. That was a group of 5 people. This is how they advertised it. They were really proud of their diversity, and seemingly they are diverse. And then if you look at the cognitive diversity index, 42%. Okay, they are much more similar. That's not that colorful anymore. But this is the interesting thing. When we compared the big boss's results with the group average, pretty identical. So technically, the big boss managed to attract people from all over the world like him. And this is a very typical case study. And think about it, when you have to employ someone, why would you hire somebody who is a hassle, who disagrees with you? You have enough problems anyway. So you are going to employ someone who is like you, somebody you can trust, somebody you get on well with. And this is the result of that. That's why cognitive diversity is important, because it gives you different perspectives. The more techniques we have, the better results. Well, this is an urban legend. This is not really true. So I used to do martial arts. I did it for more than 10 years and I loved it, and I watched a lot of documentaries, and I saw one with this guy, Redman. So technically you can punch him, you can kick him, you do what you want, he's still happy. You can practice. So the experiment was that they invited different martial art experts, including Kung Fu, Thai boxing, boxing, a lot of different bad boys. And they said, could you fight this guy? Of course I can. So they put them in a room one by one. And when they said fight, then this guy started to swear at them and run towards them and scream at them. One of them ran away, some of them froze, and only a few of them could fight back, which was weird because everybody was the master in their category. And the reason was that a Kung Fu master against a Kung Fu master, lots of techniques, great. But Kung Fu master against crazy guy, whoa, I don't know what to do. Too many techniques. And they got caught off guard. But the ones who had less techniques, but they practiced them more, they could fight back because that was instinctive. And this is exactly what I noticed in the training industry as well. You have a framework for everything. So which one are you going to master? Which one are you going to practice? Probably none of them. That doesn't really make sense. It's better to have less techniques, but you practice them so many times that it becomes part of you. And you can use it and you can focus on the task itself, not the technique. So there's another controversial idea. More diversity is not necessarily the same as better performance. That's not directly related at all. More diversity means more people with different perspectives. So diversity can be your greatest asset, but liability as well. So if you look at these devices on the left, from the 80s, probably you had most of them. And it's quite easy to see that the new versions are different. So the expertise that was enough to fix and use them wouldn't be enough to fix and use the new versions. Straightforward. But evolution happened, and now technically you can replace all of them with a smartphone. And the reason is that they managed to seamlessly integrate all those functions into one portable, user-friendly device. But what happens if you squash those devices together? You press them together. Are they going to turn into a smartphone? Highly unlikely. But that's exactly what companies do. They employ a lot of different people. They teach them how to be normal, calling it onboarding, and they expect them to work like a smartphone. That's not going to happen. Even when I did the workshop for BBC, they had 17,000 employees. And they were proud of saying that, oh, we celebrate and tolerate diversity, which is fantastic. And yes, that's needed. But you cannot turbocharge your car by celebrating your engine. You need more than that. You have to understand how the different parts work together. And then you can optimize them. And that's how you create synergy. That's how you create superior performance. Teaching them how to be normal, not really enough. Because when you employ a lot of good people, then you hope to create synergy by combining their skills. And that's what you want. But this is not what happens. And that's what the three circle partners in the US found out. So they wanted to understand, how come you put smart people in a team and they deliver only a fraction of the results they are capable of? What's the reason? So what they did, they gave an individual assessment to each member of the team. They scored them individually, and then the team had to submit one collectively, the same. What you see here, the blue number is the team result. The green number is the best possible individual score. You can see there's a huge gap. So they repeated it many, many times. And the average gap was 79%. That's how much potential is lost in a team right now because they cannot interact. Because there are misunderstandings. Because of the clash of values, clash of personalities, and poor leadership. 79%. So this is not criticism at all. This is what we present to clients, saying, guys, this is money left on the table. You have much more potential. When you tell somebody or a team that they have to change, usually that implies that they are not good enough, and nobody likes that. We tell them the exact opposite. They have much more potential than they realize, and we help them unlock it with the uncommon sense. How do we address these challenges then with Global DISC? This is the exciting part. Well, we can do that because it's now ICF accredited. We won a few awards as well. And it's all about unlocking the potential within and between people. So we do that on individual and team level as well. And it's all about the individual and group mindset. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that. But the main USP is that we can introduce the topic of cultural intelligence using the language of the most widely used behavior model, DISC. So that's already part of the repetitive learning. We speak the language they understand, and we build on something they already know. So instead of bombarding them with lots of theories, we can take them deeper. And more than 70% of Fortune 500 companies use DISC or something similar. There are 4 or 5 really big DISC distributors. And it doesn't matter which one they use, because we have the 50% that's missing from those, and that's the cultural intelligence piece. So for example, if you look at the golden circle, what, how, and why we do exactly. You know, Simon Sinek became famous because he managed to uncomplicate a complex topic. He didn't create anything new, but he packaged it in a way that finally people understood it, and that's a huge achievement. So if you look at the training industry, the psychometric and behavioral models like DISC and MBTI, they explain how the different personality types tend to behave if they are not influenced by anything or anyone around them, which is pretty impossible because you can put different people in a team and then they conform to norms on a group level. So you're not going to see that. And then you also have the intercultural models, but they are more like international models because they are about the statistically average values and beliefs of a group of people. But the challenge is that 80% of cultural differences are within countries, not between them, because we all belong to 15 or 20 cultural groups at the same time. Country of origin is just one of them. So that's how we can merge all 3 of them: what, how, and why we do it. So if you look at all these models, and this is what I mentioned in the very beginning, that I assume that they have a lot in common, then in that case, Global DISC seamlessly integrated the most researched models into one practical framework. And that's what we need. Have less techniques, but practice them more. Because we give people a vocabulary, a point of reference to talk about a rather sensitive topic, which is personal and cultural differences, which are technically the same. There's no difference there. And I'll show you why. So if you look at our behavior, why we do what we do, our individual behavior reflects our values and it supports our needs. And if you look at Arnold, for example, then he likes being in charge, he wants to win, he's extroverted, then he's going to behave very differently to someone who needs much more certainty, somebody who is much more introverted. That makes sense. Then we also talked about homophilic diversity, and this is what culture is. It's a group habit driven by values and needs. It's nothing more. This is how it started. A group of people with similar values and needs got together because it felt right. It felt good. It felt normal. Everybody was happy. It's natural. Then imagine that one of them sets up a company. Then the company culture would be based on the same values and same needs, because he's going to reward the behavior that is aligned with those values, and he's going to punish the one that isn't. But if you look at the United States, it wasn't founded by people who were bound by the need for certainty. So as you can see, the underlying values and drivers of our individual behavior are exactly the same as the underlying values and drivers of group behavior. The difference is in the intensity. And so far it would be so easy, but what happens if somebody joins the group who is very different? And we saw the statistics in the beginning. If that person conforms to the norms, and the gap between who he is and what is normal around him is too big, then probably he's going to burn out and he's going to leave. If he doesn't conform to the norms, then probably the team is going to reject him and you're not one of us. We don't need that. We can't trust you. We become suspicious because that's the opposite of trust. So because the underlying values and drivers are exactly the same, that's why we can measure the mindset gap between two individuals, or an individual and a group, or two groups. That's the reason. So often people think that we cannot compare personality and culture. So if you look at the surface level, true. If you look at the cognitive level, then yes, we can. Indeed, we have to. We cannot even separate them, because our personality determines how we want to behave, and culture or environment determines how we should, or technically how we have to behave. That's why we cannot separate them. So if you call it individual and group mindset, then we can remove the illusion of separation that we talk about different things. Think about it. If you clash with someone in your family, then you might call it personal differences. But if the exact same situation happens to you and somebody from a different country, then you might label it as cultural differences. In reality, on a cognitive level, it was exactly the same. And that's the reason why more than 80% of cultural differences are within countries, according to research, not between them. So what's in it for you as a coach, trainer, or leader? And this is when we go into the details, and I can show you the backend, the portal, and everything else. This is just a summary here. So a lot of companies use DISC, and the question is not how much more you can give a client, but how many times more. So DISC is about the situation, how you behave in a certain situation. You get the percentage, great. How many times can you use it? For the first time, and maybe when you change a job. We can do the same thing. There's a lot of information in the percentages. This is level 1, we can do that. But we can go even deeper. We go into the details as you progress in the report. We go into your how and your why, the underlying values and drivers of your behavior. We can also measure the cognitive diversity index of your team to reveal the blind spot. Because if I keep employing people like me, then my team is going to have the same tunnel vision as I do as a person, which is not ideal. So for example, when you take the assessment, it takes only 3 minutes. You get a 42-page report. And there's also a 40-minute online course built in using augmented reality. So you can download a free app, you can scan the icons, and then that would unlock some videos, 40 minutes. So that's all informative, and it's great. But information doesn't lead to transformation, and it doesn't really make sense on its own. So that's why we have to compare everything, because everything is relative. So for example, when you complete the assessment, then we can compare your results, so what's natural to you, with what's natural to somebody else. So we can compare two individuals. We can compare what's natural to you and what is normal around you in your department. We can compare it to the group average. We can compare your results with countries, 2 countries, or 16 different DISC profiles as well. But if I want to play with it, then let's say that I have a training, a workshop for 10 people. 5 of them are millennials, 5 of them are baby boomers. I can compare them as a group, because sometimes people expect to be different, and then when you show them the results, they realize they're not. So for example, we had a training for a German company that's a Fortune 300 company. They employed Brazilian engineers, and we had to create a high-performing team. Obviously, Brazilian and German, they are really different. So that's how we started. But when we revealed the results, it turned out that more than 90% of those Brazilian engineers were more German inside than most Germans. And that's when everything changed. They even left Brazil because it was too messy and disorganized for them. And they ended up working for a German company as an engineer. So they found the right environment that matched their individual preferences. But imagine if we had used the typical country-specific approach. That wouldn't have been efficient. So when they realized that they want exactly the same things, but maybe they have different best practices, it all changed. And the conflict went down really quickly. And the trust and synergy went up significantly. So that's important to do. But we can also do this on group level. We can compare the different offices in different countries or different departments, because the report is informative, but it comes alive when you compare it to something or someone. That's when it makes sense. But just because we do the workshop or we do the coaching, nothing is going to change. You know exactly that changing habits is difficult. So the secret is in the follow-up. So we have to get better at the follow-up. And we created an interactive coaching platform. So you complete the assessment, and then based on your results, you can start your quest. Technically, this is not a boring online course that you can click through. No, everything happens in real life. So you do what you normally do, but you would do it slightly differently depending on the task or the mission that you get. So you get a different outcome, a different feeling. Then you go back to the app, you answer some reflective questions, and then you can unlock the next one. There are 3 levels with 7 missions each. And if you do it properly, it takes around 2.5 to 3 months. Because people learn from experience, not from theories. They need both. So imagine the perceived value from a customer perspective. And what if you also offer, let's say, a 90-minute group coaching session online once they finished it? You keep them busy for 3 months, plus that's a lot of help. Escaping your personality trap is not easy, but that's the reason why we do the quest. That you take the assessment, you learn about your preferences, and statistically, most people have 5 to 10% flexibility. So that's your comfort zone. This is completely normal. Our brain is 2% of our body weight, but it uses more than 20% of the energy, so it's designed to create habits and shortcuts. It's designed to keep us alive, so it's trying to keep us in our comfort zone. But if you look at this as a range of communication styles, and you're in a situation that would require this one, then you can see that your stress zone is huge. So, or it takes too much energy to flex your behavior, or you cannot do it, so you don't get the best possible result. So what can we do? Can we change your preferences? Yes, we can. Neuroscience proved it, but that's not the point. Nothing is wrong with you. You're not broken. What we want instead is to expand your comfort zone. And that's exactly why we created the quest. So by the time you finish with the quest, your comfort zone and your behavior flexibility are going to be pretty awesome. And technically, this is what global mindset or ICQ mindset is about, that you are able to see the same situation from different perspectives so you can make a better decision. And then you can choose to respond instead of just reacting. So it's all about cognitive and behavioral flexibility. That's our topic. And we don't have to go abroad to experience huge cultural differences. They're all around us. So this is what it looks like inside, and I can show you the actual app as well, or even you can try it. It's designed for your type. So each mission is going to push you out of your comfort zone just a little bit more. But that's the reason why we need the right one. It's based on your results. Because if somebody pushes you out too much or not enough, then you might freak out, or it's not challenging enough. So it's designed for your results. And as a trainer, it's so difficult to talk about this topic. And for example, when I did a workshop for Anna at the Theater Spain, then the participants asked me how they could create a business in this field. And I said, I know that this is theater, but just don't say the word culture. Because often people misunderstand it. There's a misconception, and it is important. This is the foundation. But most people think that if they are not international, they don't need this topic. Or they might think that it's a fluffy topic. It's not really important. It's not really practical. But the fact is that if you employ or serve more than one person, that's already a multicultural team, even if it's not international. But it is also a difficult topic. It's hard to grab it, and it doesn't have a product, so we created a product. So for example, all the licenses can deliver a global mindset professional certificate. This is a one-day corporate training. We prepared all the training material, the brochure, even the certificate template, something that they can hand out. People are proud of that. They put it on LinkedIn, and they advertise the licenses as well. So we make this topic as tangible as possible. And if you look at the current situation now, then a lot of people need to work remotely. Virtual learning and working are becoming really important. But that's not easy. How do you create trust? How do you work with people if you cannot see the feedback? That's why we created something called the fast teaming passport. So we've been using it for almost a year now. And for example, if you have participants, they have to do it once. And then when they start a project or they are in a team, everybody can read it. So we can exponentially increase the level of trust. So this is about me, for example. Basic data. When I work, I would love to. When I work, I really dislike. When I work, I need my strengths in a team. You should know these things about me. What others tend to misunderstand about me. Imagine if you could start something like that, even a relationship. What I'm the most proud of, my hobbies. So you read it and then you have a much better idea of me as a person. But then we go deeper. So this is level 1. You can see that it's color-coded. This is not real because I'm not yellow, definitely. But for presentation purposes, it's good and I can do that. But that's not natural to me. So you look at it and then you have a really good idea about this person. And then we can go deeper, your how, the sliding scale. So this comes with a full 5-hour training as well for the group. And then we can discuss the group as well. We can see where you have the biggest gaps, what's the composition, where you might misunderstand each other, the biggest conflicts. So we can coach them, we can prepare them. And that's the best thing, that they use the same vocabulary when they talk about a person, a team, a company, or even a country. It's the same system, the same point of reference. And here they cannot use the excuse that, oh, because I'm Spanish. No, 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 no. It's how you answer the question, what's important to you. That matters. We cannot use these excuses. That's not the point. And then the book is out now. Maybe it's not the best timing, but it is out. So this is why I offer this as well. I read it I think it was 2 days ago when I read this from Warren Buffett, that when the tide goes out, you discover who has been swimming naked. So he was talking about recession. What's happening during recession? What is needed? Because personal and people development are not really a sexy topic, let's be honest, because often people cannot see the results. At least not immediately. But when it gets difficult, that's when you realize how much you need people. And according to him, these are the 5 skills that you need during recession: open dialogue, leadership, change management, accountability, productivity, with technically collaboration. All about people. It's not about the technology. If your people are not skilled and they are not engaged, there's going to be a problem. And that's exactly what Deloitte came up with as well, that the companies that invested 1.5 or 2 times more in the leadership training, they thrived, they survived. And especially when the recession finished, they were doing really well. Think about it. A lot of big companies now are going to lay off people. So when everything goes back to normal, there's going to be a huge leadership gap. People are going to be demotivated. They're not going to have the skills. Recruitment, again, that's going to be a mess. But for example, when I looked at the training industry during the recession in 2008 and 9, then first, initially, everything dropped because people freaked out. And then when the initial shock settled down, then coaching and training went up much more because it became even more important. How can you bring out the best in your team? How can you motivate them? How can you impress your customers? They had to realize just what's happening now, the key workers in the UK. NHS, for example, doctors, nurses, and the people who are important during a disaster. They were not the politicians, they were not the business people. They were the people who actually provided service. So when the tide goes out, you discover who has been swimming naked. That's just happening right now. So to be honest, I see this as a really good opportunity for all of us to get ready, because you have to fix the roof when the sun is shining, not when it's raining. So this is the added value to the licensees as well, that they can use all the references. It's also endorsed by the leading experts in the field. And let's be honest, size matters. So, if you're independent coaches and trainers, that's difficult. But if we can demonstrate that we belong to a bigger group and we can use all those references, or for example, we have a video on our website and Joe Matone, Steve Jobs' former coach, talks about global disc, it adds a lot of value to it. Because if it's good enough for him, they can give it a try. So we work with some Fortune 500 companies, 7 universities now, the government in New Zealand, that's been going on for more than 3 years now, some other global clients. So we can also add all these references to their portfolio. And of course, they're not going to say that, oh, I work with these guys. No, but the tool that I'm using has been used by them. And that adds more value to their life. But the best part is that it's all about this awesome community. So what I really wanted was to create a kind of ecosystem where awesome people create synergy. And at times of crisis, you realize who is who, because they cannot hide anymore. And when people start reaching out to each other and they come up with ideas and new projects, it's amazing to see. So for example, we do a meetup every month, every 5, maybe 6 weeks, where we can share news, best practices, problems, anything we want. Because being an entrepreneur, being a trainer, you know, we talk to a lot of people, but it is a lonely journey, let's be honest. But when you can share your concerns with someone who is in a similar field, it means a lot. And it's all about celebrating who we are. And even though we use the same tools, we are never a competition because we have different expertise and backgrounds. So this is what we started doing, creating different webinars. And this is exactly what Sinto mentioned in the beginning, that we showcase the practitioners. How do you use global disc? Show me the case study. What's your take on it? So we had one in the transforming higher education, uncommon sense, and then global companies. The next one is about role plays. It's, you know, I learned new things about the tool because it has its own life. So belonging to this group, I think, is one of the best parts. So this is what we can do, how to become a practitioner. We can do it in 2 times 6 hours. It's ICF accredited, no need to travel. We can do everything that we want. So just one more thing, maybe because of this, that when I got certified in a lot of different things, then I had a lot of frustrations. One was that I have to travel, so I spend more on the flights and the hotels sometimes than on the course itself. That doesn't make sense. And then it's expensive, so I didn't have money left to buy assessment and practice. So that's not good again. And then I got maybe 50 PowerPoint slides, generic ones. I had no idea what to do with them. So we address all of these things. It can be done online, which is really practical now. Then it comes with 3.5 gigabytes of sales and marketing material, more than 200 PowerPoint slides, just the training material, which is enough for 3 or 4 days of workshop. Everything comes with the notes. So if you click on notes, you get all the information with that slide. So you can review it anytime. So you know exactly what's happening there. It's constantly updated. It also comes with 20 credits and quest credits as well. So technically, if you use them up, you made much more money than you invested in the program, which is good. Or you can just use it and you can practice. Because I don't see a shortcut here. If some companies want to make money from the licenses and then they introduce royalty and annual fee and some other nasty things. We don't have any of those things. The idea is that if you are successful, we are successful as well. So if you have a project, you need help with it, let's do it. And it's fun, challenging but fun.